webinar. We're going to start in just a couple minutes. We're going to wait for some more of our attendees to log in and join us. So we'll start in just a minute or so. Okay, well, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you got a chance to grab some coffee, and we're going to start right away. So I'm Mike Garcia. I'm the tech specialist here with Arizona School Boards Association, and David Decabooter is with us as well. He is a policy analyst. David, you want to say hi?
Hey, good morning.
So if you have any questions about the webinar, you can submit questions to us through GoToWebinar. If you have questions about policy stuff, make sure maybe address those to David, and if they are tech questions, you can ask me. So we're going to jump right in. The way you get to PolicyBridge is you go to asba.org and you go to Policy Services, and we're going to go down to PolicyBridge. Now, if you wanted to view all of the district policies on PolicyBridge, you would access it through this link. And for today, we would like you to reference the training manual. So if you click the training manual, it's going to load a PDF. It's going to look just like this. And we're basically going to go through some of the sections today and kind of go through an overview of how to use PolicyBridge. So I would have this out as a handy guide. And then after you would click on this. Right now, I'll click on this right now to show you. This is going to show all of the manuals that are available that we have online. But for today's purpose, we are going to focus on one manual, and it's on a training site, so it's going to look slightly different. And that's right here. So when we launched PolicyBridge, we sent out a list of links that were specific to all of the districts. So you should have a link that looks similar without it saying training, that just has your district name. So for today, we're going to use Madison. And you'll notice the difference between the last view is that I only can see Madison's document instead of a huge list of all of the available policies. So I'm going to log in with a test account, and we're going to jump right in. So once you've logged in, you've got your dashboard, and your dashboard is kind of the hub to where you get to access all of the features that PolicyBridge has to offer. The first section is called My Docs, or Policies Requiring My Attention. Now, this is going to be documents that either you're currently working on, that are in progress, or that have been assigned to you. And we'll get to that in a little bit, whether you're working with ASBA in a review and they're sending documents back and forth, or if you have a sub-user and you're working internally to send documents back and forth, this is where you would access them. So I'm going to click on My Docs. And I've got a couple of documents that I was working on earlier. And you can see that I'm working inside my Madison manual. And you can see that the policy that I was working on is CBI, okay to see on there, and BBA, Board Member Qualifications. You can see that it's matched to our master manual, which is our NEPN, and the master policy, and the status. So since I'm working on them and the document hasn't been approved and it's still in draft, the status is going to say draft. Now if I submit this to ASBA or to a sub-user, the status would change to review, and then as well as saying the status date, and then any notes that are associated with that document. So I can click Notes, and I can see that my alternate identity, John Smith, save the document, and I made a little note here that said update per training. And this will chronicle all the notes that are assigned or associated with the document that you're working on. And you can also sort. So let's say you've been working for a couple of weeks on some documents, and instead of 2, you have 50. You can sort them by date or the status just by clicking the little caret here and either selecting ascending or descending. It's a very useful tool, and you can slide these around to see what you're looking at. The next one is policy advisories awaiting adoption, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but I'll click on it now. So ASBA is still going to send out policy advisories the old way through email with the discussion piece and the policy advisories, but now they're going to show up kind of like a shopping cart in this new tab called Policy Advisories Awaiting Adoption. And you'll notice it's similar to my documents. It'll still indicate that it's on your policy manual, and then which policy is affected. So in this case, it's BDA, Board Organization. Let's see, organizational meeting. The status is in review because I haven't accepted it or declined it, and the date, who it's assigned to, and that's going to be me since I'm the super user for the district. And then you can see the PA. So this button is what allows you to see the discussion piece. And so you can click on this, and I've got some temporary text in here. But this is what ASBA is going to write in here that's going to say, you know, we updated this policy X, Y, and Z because the legislature made a law or there was a change. And this is kind of the discussion and justification for why we're issuing a policy advisory and why we're advising you to update your manual. You can click the edit button, which is going to launch the editor that would take you to that document. Or you can adopt as is, or you can decline. So let's say we issue a policy advisory for high school graduation, and you are an elementary school district. Well, then that's not going to affect you. So you can just click decline and click submit, and then you're going to have to put a little note in and to say, you know, not applicable. You can also just click adopt. So if you click adopt, it's going to insert ASBA's language right into your document. And then the same thing, though, you'll have to put the, I'll go through this and show you, you'd have to put a date of adoption since it would be an official board action. And you can select the date here, you know, let's say it was, some meetings are on Tuesdays, let's say it was on, you know, July 7th on a Tuesday. And then you'd put your note in there, board approved per ASBA recommendation, whatever. And that's kind of a quick way to go through the policy advisories. Now, in theory, that's nice to be able to go through something that fast, but we also know that that's not necessarily easy for some of the districts to just go through them that quickly. So I clicked on edit, and now I can see the document that I have up that was associated with the policy advisory. And you'll notice where it says review, carrying through from that, that tab. And now if I wanted to see again what the justification was for the new language, there's this little button down here that says Policy Advisory, PA version 2, and I can click that, and it's going to bring up that same piece before that had the discussion. So this is really interesting because as time moves forward, you know, your document's going to change, and some of these documents might change multiple times. So as you have different versions, and as your document grows, you can always kind of go back and say, you know, well, what happened? What was a policy advisory in 2015 in June? And then you can click on it and see, oh yeah, that's why we changed the policy. It was because the legislature, you know, implemented some new law. But at first glance, you don't know what we added or what we changed. So there's a nice feature here called Compare. And so you've got a public version, and you've got the review, which is the one that's associated with the policy advisory. And so I can click the compare button between these two and click compare, and it's going to show me the difference between my district document and ASBA's new language. So red would be language that either was removed by the district or ASBA. Blue language would be new language. And you can see, for the purpose of this training, I added, here is some new text for the training. So you can review this internally and then present it to the board, and you can see, well, here's the new language that was inserted, and you can reference that discussion piece here as well. And so now we're going to go back out just a little bit. And we're going to go back to the dashboard. The next piece is called the work history. And the work history shows everything that has been touched in your policy manual forever. So right now, the database was reset, and that's why there's only 2 instances here. But as time goes, or if you click on your work history, you'll see that there is a lot of revisions and a lot of actions that happen. And this is interesting because you can, again, sort by date, and you can quickly navigate and say, oh, you know what, we did something in August, what was it? And you can find that information relatively quickly. And you can kind of play catch up and see like, oh, you know, person X made this change to this document, and so you can kind of check on their progress. You can change your password, which we don't have to show you right now. And then there's also user management, which I guess we could show you now. So right now, you are assuming, if you're on the webinar, that you are the district's super user, which is the sole point of contact for PolicyBridge interfacing with Arizona School Boards Association. So kind of imagine it as 2 inverted cones, and those tips are meeting each other. On your end, you are the single point of contact, and you can create a series of sub-users that funnel out. And then you can collect feedback and information and transmit that to Arizona School Boards Association. And then on our end, it's the same thing. We have one policy analyst that's assigned to your district, but we can also move information around to get feedback from other users here. So you'll notice there is a list of users that are already in Madison. You've got Nadine, Quinn, and Terry here. And you can see they've got some basic information. So if I wanted to create a new user, there's a little button here called New User. The organization is already going to be grayed out, so I'm not going to have to enter that information in. Madison's in there. I can enter in a name. I'll enter my name in here. And then you're going to enter in an email. And you can put a title. So we're going to do demo. And a passphrase. A passphrase is just another word for password. And then what's really important here is the start date. The way that the computer and the system works is that the start date actually has to be the day before today. So the 25th wouldn't work if I tried to log in, so I'm going to select yesterday, the 24th. And you'll notice there's an end date. And by default, it's going out 2 years. So there's some flexibility here. So let's say you have an attorney that the district hires, and they have a contract for 12 months. Well, then you can set that end date to give them just 12 months, and you can assign them the role of a school district editor. Now, there's the other role is what's called a restricted reader, which is basically not really any different than what the public can view. The only difference is a restricted reader would allow you to see in the work history what somebody has read. Otherwise, you're probably going to be using the school district editor role the most. And then you would hit save, and then their name and information would show up over here. So we've had some questions about that, and that's kind of how you would set up a new user. We're going to hit close. So we're going to go into editing, and then I'll jump back to those user roles to see how to show how you can assign functions to other users. So if you wanted to navigate the document, you can click through it. And you can just click through and see your document. But let's say you wanted to make a change. Well, you're going to right-click over the document, and you'll see that there's some options. You can edit the selected document, you can add a regulation, or you can add an exhibit. And so for right now, actually, I'm going to pick a slightly better. Very slow. I'm going to right-click. I right-click and I click Edit. You'll notice the little flag. The flag means that you're working on a document that has a public version, and it's, in a sense, live. Now, no one can see with the changes that you're making. It's just an indication to you to let you know that you are working on a document versus it just being in view-only mode. So we'll go back and click Edit. And up at the top here, we have what's called a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And these are all of your options when you edit and alter a document. So what does that mean? So let's say I wanted to add some new text. You'll notice that in this drop-down it says body text. So if I click around, you'll see that it should change. So now I'm in a list and it says list 1, body text. If I go down to adopted, the span is going to change. And so this drop-down is called the span class. And this is what really drives all the formatting in the document. I can make it a title. I can make it a heading. I can scroll down and I can make it bold, or I can make it italics. We're working on some updates for PolicyBridge in what we would call phase 2 and then ultimately a phase 3. And some of those changes are going to be the ability to have text bold and italics. And right now it's very challenging to get tables inserted as well as images. So we're working on getting that up and running within, I would say, less than 6 months, hopefully 3 months or less. We should be able to add tables and images. So let's say you wanted to add a bunch of text. Now this is where some users have emailed us and had issues with formatting. I'm going to copy some dummy text over here in a different window. And now what I suggest is, you might get some email from somebody suggesting changes, and the email might be a couple of pages of of text and formatting. And if you did one big copy and paste, with this editor, it might be kind of time-consuming to clean that up. And so what I recommend is doing sections at a time. So there's this little button up at the top that says Paste as Plain Text. Now you're always going to want to do that because what that does is it strips any previous formatting. So what does that mean? Let's say somebody sends you a Word document or an email and the font is calligraphy and the background is some pattern and some of the text is pink. Well, you're not going to insert that into your policy document. And so what you'll do is you'll select the copy-paste button as plain text, and it's going to have this little window in here, and I'm going to copy and paste my dummy text in here, and I'm going to hit OK. And now it's going to insert it. And you'll notice now it's now not aligned with the other text. And this is because it's in body text, and this is no style. So what I'll do is I'll scroll down. I will select my text. I don't want to go too far. And then I'm going to select body text. And now it's going to move it over. It's going to be in the same Arial font. And it's going to be aligned, and it's going to look the way that it should look. So we've also had some questions about bullets. Now, bullets are interesting. If you wanted to keep the same format bullet that's pre-existing, you can copy and paste. And it's going to have that same bullet that was there. So here's new text, or bullet. But if you wanted to insert a completely different bullet style, you can select the bullet option up here. And let me see, I've got some text over here. And you could, here it is, item. So that's one option. You can also change it to a numbered sequence, bullets, and the same thing. Now let's say you wanted to do a bullet or a list that wasn't bound by the little bullet image or the numbering system, and you wanted it to be completely unique and different. Well, we can do that too. Oops. And so what I'll do is I'm going to, okay, some body text. Got some text over here. Again, it's going to ask me to strip that text. And so here's my items. Now, if I wanted to have item 1 be the first line indent, then I'm going to say it is a list 1 item. Now it pushed all those items over. So let's say I wanted it to say I, and there's item 1, and let's say this is item 1A. Let's just call it A. and you could select list 2, and it would push it out. So that's another option to be able to do custom lists. Some other options that we have up in the editor is the ability to hyperlink or anchor link. So let's say we go to Madison. And we're just going to copy this web address here. But let's say you referenced a field trip form that was located on your website. Well, you could just hyperlink right to that. Please download our form. And you can select text, click the hyperlink button, and it's going to ask you, do you want it to be a hyperlink? You just leave all this by default. And I'm going to insert the hyperlink. I'm going to hit OK. And now it's got a hyperlink to an external location. Now, let's say you'll notice that there's legal references, or if you wanted to do a cross-reference, and associate this document with another document within your document. So let's say we want to do that. Is it REF? And let's say we're in BBA. We're going to select that text, and instead of going up and selecting the hyperlink, we're going to select the hyperlink with the little green image under it. And now I'm going to go, I've got my document here. I can go to section B, which is where I'm at, and I'm going to go to BBA, select that, and I'll hit select. And now that hyperlink, or what we would call a jump destination, has been inserted. So I've made some changes. And now what you always want to do is you always want to save. If you don't hit save, then you're going to lose all your work. So if you've learned anything from your college days or high school days, always save your work. I'm going to hit save. And now we've had some questions about notes. Notes are, for the system, they are mandatory. Now we've also had questions about, well, what should I type in the note? My recommendation is less is more. Be very specific, but don't be overly wordy. So for today, I've made a couple of updates for the training. So update document per training. If you wanted to be a little bit more specific, you could say, added items per board discussion or recommendation, and that's it. You just hit submit. Or you could type in NA. So I'm going to hit submit. It's going to take those changes. And you'll notice down at the bottom for the status, there is the public-facing document, which I have actually not touched. That was created in March. And then there's a draft. So if you wanted to see, what was the items that I added or removed, you can compare, just like the policy advisory, you can compare these two versions. So I'm going to click the two compare items, click compare versions, and then I can see, here's the blue text, here's the new text that I added, and here's the new items, the new hyperlink, and the cross-reference. So this could be really useful if you're in a meeting and the superintendent or the board makes recommendations, and you make your changes in here. Well, if you just sent them this document, they may not be able to easily recognize or identify what was changed. Well, with the compare, you can copy and paste this right out of here and share this with the board. Or depending on your setup, you could have PolicyBridge on a projector and in the meeting live, and you can show them. This is the text that was discussed, and this is what it looks like. And then from there, you can go back and let's say they decide, you know what, we don't want these two items, or we're not happy about this. Then you can go back, make sure you deselect compare, and you can remove those items. I'm going to hit save again. And now it's going to essentially override that draft that I created. So if I wanted to see again what I did, I can select those two compare buttons, fire that compare button and see that I removed what was there before. Now, it's not going to show a red line because those items were not in the public document. Okay. So we mentioned sub-users. So let's say this policy was about transportation, and you wanted the transportation director to view this document, make changes, or make recommendations. Well, you would have already have had to set them up as a sub-user. And then what you would do is you would have this option here at the bottom that says assign to. You click that drop down, and let's say I'm going to assign it to Terry. So I would click Terry's name here, and then I would click reassign to editor. So then what happens, Terry would log in, she would click on My Docs, and that document's going to show up in her My Docs. Now, a district editor cannot navigate these documents and just click edit like you can. They can only work on what's been assigned to them. So let's say, you assign this to Terry, she opens the document, and she says, you know what, I'm going to recommend that we don't include this paragraph. Then she would go down and click Save. It would create a new draft. And then instead of having this Reassign Editor button, it's only going to say Submit for Review. So Terry would then click Submit for Review, and it would go into your inbox as the super user. In your My Docs, it would show up as Status Review. You could click on that. Just like before, you could run the compare to see what she's done. And then if you wanted to if the board wanted to take action on it, you can either click Adopt. Now you're going to have to select the official date of adoption. Very generic note, board approved, per discussion X, Y, and Z. And you hit Submit, and it's going to go to ASBA. Now let's say you're not at that point yet, and you've worked on this, either you as a secretary or you as your superintendent, the transportation director has looked at this, but you would like ASBA to read it as well. Well, then you could click the Submit for Review button, and it's going to go to the district, the ASBA analyst that's assigned to this document, and you can type a note. Please review our discussion piece or our new language per, legal. Now, David, have you gotten?
We have gotten those, and what's helpful with that is we can read through it and let you know whether or not copyright's going to remain on that ahead of time. A lot of districts are very conscious about retaining the copyright, so they don't want to make too many changes. So that's always something you can submit to us for us to review, and the turnaround time should be pretty quick on that, with us getting it, being able to do the comparison, read through, and get back to you.
And again, just a reminder, I do have the questions up. You can keep sending questions in. I will address a couple of those right now. So, like David said, you're going to make your recommendation here. You hit Submit. Now it's going to go into ASBA's inbox, and then our hope is that within 3 days, we will get back to you and either publish the document, it's good to go, or get back to you with a little bit of feedback. So I had a question. How can you print the compare? Well, you cannot print the compare native to Bridge because it's going to use the web-based interface, and it's going to include this view over here. So what I recommend is just to copy the document, and if you have Word or if you have Outlook, just copy, paste it into there, and then you can print it from that. Or you can put it in a PDF, or like if you had board docs or e-boards, same thing. You could copy and paste this into a Word document, save it as a PDF, and then attach it. Let's see here. Recall. I click on my work history, it shows policy detail. All right. I think for one of the questions, I'm going to have to get back to you about your work history. If you do not have login information to access PolicyBridge, you can email myself, and I'll share that with you at the end of the presentation, or David Deckebuter, or any of the policy analysts, and we can get you the login information. traditionally, it should be your district email address, and then your first letter of your first name, and then your last name. So if you try using those credentials and you do get in, then I strongly recommend clicking change password as soon as you get in. Type in that old password, the new password, and hit reset, and you should be good to go. So the other options we have on here is searching. Searching is very powerful. So let's see here. Let's say, you know, you wanted to, your board president says, hey, we want to know what's involved with the superintendent evaluation. So I can select my policy here. It's going to select everything. I'm going to hit my advanced search. And the exact phrase that I want to search for is going to be the superintendent. And the board president mentioned the word evaluation. Now, if you do containing all of these words or the exact phrase, you're kind of taking a gamble on whether or not that exact phrase is going to be in your document. So one of the searches that I recommend and that I like is a proximity search, which is down here. So what you're going to say is, I want to look for the word superintendent, but it has to be close to the word evaluation. And now let's say this is a search that you do a lot. Well, you can save this, and we'll show you in a second. Or you can say, you know what, let's say I don't want to just search my document. I want to search everyone in my county, and so Madison's in Maricopa County. You could select Maricopa County. And you could say, I want to search my current manual or all manuals. So if you're searching your county, you're going to have to select all manuals. Or district size. I'm a small district, so I'll search less than 3,000 or more than 3,000 students. Or I want to look at a different district type. So this is good for research purposes. You know, what are your peers using in their language or in their documents? So for right now, I'll just click search. And now it's going to give me a list of, here's the collection, here's Madison. So I can see what document I'm looking at, because if I would have selected all manuals, then there would have been a whole big list in here. And I can see where this gets hit. So I mentioned save. So let's say this is something that, you know, this is a search that I'm going to run probably monthly. Put this in here, I'll hit save. And now I can click on one of these results. So GCORB, evaluation of professional staff members, and you go, you know what, this is not what I was looking for. Well, I can go to, right up here it says next hit doc, and it's going to just travel right through that list of documents with ones that have the information that I'm searching for. And so you can move relatively quickly and say, oh, this is exactly what I was looking for. Now let's say, you can see these words appear here a lot, but let's say it was sparse. Well, instead of hitting next hit doc, you can select next hit, and it's going to move within the page. And so, you know, in this scenario, it's not a good example because there's a lot, but if it was like, you know, further down or this was a multiple page document, you would be able to find that relatively quickly. So let's say I want to repeat this. Back to the home, I go to advanced search, and since I saved it, I can click superintendent. It's going to fill in the parameters that I have. I'm going to hit search, and it's just going to repeat that same search that I did. Looks like we got some questions that came in. Is there a way to change the super users? Yes, there is a way to change the super user. If the superintendent of the district emails Renee Watson or any of the policy analysts or myself and makes a request that the super user be changed from person X to person Y, it's something we can do relatively very, very quickly. I also see a question, could you download a policy? Yes. So this is kind of in tandem with printing, which is the next section that we're going to cover. So let's say you wanted to, let's say, download Section A or a document within Section A. The process is going to be the same. So I would select Section A, and if I didn't, I would just select the document that I want. But in this case, I'm going to select all of Section A. And then I'm going to go up here and select Print. Now it's going to open the little editor, and I'm going to say allow this. And just as a side note, if it might be hard to tell, but I'm using Google Chrome. We strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you use Google Chrome or Firefox. Internet Explorer has known issues with Bridge. Strongly, just do not use Explorer. If you have an IT department that has not installed Firefox or Chrome, I would strongly suggest working with them and having them install Chrome or Firefox, because Internet Explorer is a nightmare and it's not going to work with this. So sorry for that little tangent. So here you'll notice that it's loaded Section A in the preview. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is scroll down, and you'll see where it says headers and footers. It's a little hard to see on here. But at the bottom of the page, it has the web address. So if you wanted to make it look nice and clean, you're going to deselect headers and footers. And now your document is going to look great. So what you can do here is, so you said, how do I download? Well, you can print this, but if you wanted to download it as a PDF, you could select change. And right in here, built into Chrome, is a PDF converter. I select PDF. I hit save. I'm going to save it on the desktop. I can change the file name here. Okay. And now it's on my desktop. So let's say you wanted to download the entire manual as a PDF, and you were going to travel and go on a plane and not have access to Bridge. What you would do is you'd go up to the top of your document, and you're going to right-click, and you'll notice it says Collection Metadata. So I'm going to click that, and you'll see a little hyperlink option right here. It says Download Print Full PDF. So you're going to click that, and now it's going to say, do you want to display an existing one or render a new one? If you've never clicked this, it's going to just give you a message that it went into a queue. Since I've already done this in the past, there's one ready for me, so I'm going to click yes. And then depending on your internet connection and speed, it's going to take a while, because it's about, I think on average, 1,200 pages or so. And so it's going to load the PDF here, and it's the entire PDF of your document. So it looks like it's taking just a little bit, but it's pretty big. We'll come back to that in a second and see some of the other questions that you guys have sent down. So yeah, I see a question. When you log in, are you only supposed to see your district manual? Well, if you access it through our site and you click here, you're going to see all of the manuals. We sent an Excel list that had your district specific link. If you don't have that, you can email me and I will send it to you, and it'll be your district specific link that'll just look like this. And then you could take that web address and you can share it on your district website and with the public, and they would only see your manual instead of getting mixed up with all the other multiple manuals. Let's see this one, yeah. And here, okay, so here we go. So the full PDF loaded. Here's the pages. We've got the district name here, and then this is it. This is the full manual. You can save as, or you can print if you have a massive printer. And you can see here's your policy document. So we'll go back here. Now, if you're ever curious, if you know of who at ASBA is assigned to your district, you'll notice it says policy analyst, and since this is training, my name is here. But is Steve Hyland before Madison?
Madison, Steve.
Yeah. So Madison's district, policy analyst would say Steve Hyland. So let's say you have an issue with Bridge, or you submitted a document for review, and for whatever reason we haven't gotten back to you, or you haven't heard anything. If you right-click on that, I'll do it again. So you're going to right-click on your collection metadata. You'll see who's assigned to you and say, oh, it's David Deckebuter. You can jump onto our website, and you can call us, and then ask for David, and then he'd be able to jump in there and help you. All right, I see we got some more questions that came in. We'll take a look at those. Let's see here. We got quite a few. So I've got a question. When editing a policy, do I add different colors or strike-throughs, or does this occur automatically? And if you remember, if you run the compare, that happens automatically. The system does that for you. So I'll show you that. I'll just do that again really quick. So I'm going to go to section C. Here's the document for superintendent, and I'm going to make some edits. Let's say these regulations, I'm going to strike this sentence out. I am going to add some temporary text, some temporary Latin here. So I took a sentence out, I added something. Let's say I'm going to superintendent, I'm going to change it to superintendent shall. Now this is a biggie though, don't, sometimes those are bad, but for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to say updated doc per demo. I'm going to hit submit. And now to get those strike through and red lines, at the very bottom, hopefully you guys can see it on your screen. It says compare. I'm clicking the 2 check options. And then I'm going to select compare versions. And then now here's the red line. I can see I removed these regulations are. I struck that. I took out the word may and added the word shall. And then I added the new text. And it looks like adopted got thrown off, so I can go back and fix that. And resave. It overrode my draft, and now it's good to go.
So the way you used to submit policies to Renee, where you would add the strikeouts or you would highlight the new language, that's no longer necessary. When you send it in to us via PolicyBridge, you should just send a document that appears the way that you would want it to appear in your manual, and then when we run that comparison, we'll see where the changes are. So it used to be helpful to do it that way with the crossouts and the highlights, but it's no longer necessary when you're submitting it into PolicyBridge.
Steve, I got a question for you. We have a question that says, date of manual adoption. Will this show a specific date corresponding with board action? Do we enter this? I've noticed that currently all policies have the generic statement.
It's very helpful if you add the date on which the board actually adopted the policy, as we're getting a little bit of variety when we get those from you. So yes, if you put it in the document itself when it's updated, if for instance it was done last Tuesday, you'd go ahead and put June 23rd in the document itself, and then it's also helpful when the notes come up to go ahead and say this was just adopted, date of adoption June 23rd, because we do keep track of that. It's not necessary to do it for the exhibits and the regulations. I would suggest go ahead and put the date in the notes on those, but in the actual exhibits and regulations you don't need the date of adoption, but it is very helpful to go ahead and change the date of adoption in the document that you submit.
Yeah, in the specific document that you're working on. I got another question that says, if my district does not use ASBA copyright version, how can I access that version? Well, one of the ways that you can do that is just through the process of submitting it for review. If you are the district super user and you select submit for review, it is going to go, and in this case, let's say it's going to go to David's inbox, and you can say, you know, please review for ASBA compliance. And that's going to go in there. Now, let's say that, you know, you're waiting or it doesn't come back. You can always ask David or pick up the phone and call him. And on our end, we can actually compare any of these documents right against our master. So we can always check to see what language could be in there. I wouldn't say should, but what language could be in there. And it says, we have another question, can you compare the policy advisories with your manual prior to adopting? Or do you need to manually type in the changes? So I'll go back to the policy advisories. So we're going to go to policy advisories, waiting for adoption. Again, I can review the discussion piece, so the justification for why we changed the law, or why we changed the language. Sorry, we didn't change the law. And I can click edit. And right here at the very bottom it says status review and public. Public is your document. Review would be those changes or the suggested ones. I can select those 2 compare options. I can click the compare button, and then I can see what language was added or changed between those two. And that's where you can go through and say, oh, look, ASBA added this, or ASBA removed this, and then you can go through and discuss whether or not you want to accept those changes. So let's say you did, and you said, you know what, we like this language and we want to go with it here. You can copy it and put it back into your editor, and you can click Save if you wanted to save a new draft, or if the board voted on it, they're good to go. You can click Adopt and go from there. We've got a couple more questions. This is great. Keep sending your questions in. Okay, we have a question. When you create a new sub-user, how do you know that they've been added successfully? This is a good question. So if I hit User Management, everyone that I've created or everyone that's in the list is going to show up here on the left tab. You'll see their first name, their last name, the organization, and active. So we'll just do it right now. I'll put myself in. Yeah, I might throw an error because my email is already in the system. My title is going to be demo, password. So we'll just hit save. Yeah, so I already exist. So if I didn't, then I would show up here instantly. And that's how you'd be able to see who's in there. So I'll go back. Who's associated, who's a sub-user, click User Management. And let's say you didn't know. So I'm going to say, okay, what role does Nadine have? I can click on Nadine's name. It's going to fill her information in, and I can see that she is a school district editor. I can click on Quinn, superintendent, and I can see that he is a school district editor, and I can see in this case that Terry is the school district editor. Who's the superintendent? Show me a superintendent. All right. More questions. Okay, so we have a question about can the color of the text be changed? Unfortunately, no. The colors are as is. Okay, can I show you how to get the metadata again? Yes. So here's our document. Here's our policy, Madison Elementary School. Just so it's not as confusing. You can always, it'll default to this, but that's all this caret does, right? It's going to list those docs. And then you're going to hover over, there's a yellow folder, it's going to say your district's title, the name, and you just right-click on it, and the only option is collection metadata. You're going to click that, and it's going to bring up that metadata. Again, this is where you would access the PDF, or to see, you know, who the district editor is and who at ASBA is assigned to it. And the other information here is, you know, what county are you in, what district type are you, and then since we're compliance-driven, this is showing you that we're using the NEPIN model document when reviewing your policies. Can you explain the steps of review and approval? Okay, so this is for you, David. Can you explain the steps of ASBA review and approval on policies versus just changing a regulation and publishing it?
It's always going to come to us to look at. You don't have to submit it to review. If you submit it right away for adoption, we're still going to be looking at it, and if everything seems okay, we'll go ahead and publish it. But in that moment, we might say, hey, this sounds a little different. We might have a clarification. We might have noticed a typo or anything like that, in which case we won't adopt it, but we will submit it back to you for your own review. The review is just an option that you have in order to take care of it yourself. But if everything is how you want it, if you've had the board adopt it, if you have no questions about it, you can submit it the first time as adoption, and if we look at it and everything is fine, we'll publish it right then.
And we got a question that's going to follow that right up. When adding a new exhibit to an existing policy, does ASBA need to review before bringing it to the board?
No, we don't need to. We're certainly happy to. We can tell you that that sounds good. Other districts have done this. We're considering maybe doing it for everyone. But no, you can take it to the board first and then have us look at it.
Okay. So I got another question about how, since we can't have tables or Excels yet, how can you add those? Well, one way is, let's say you had a Word document or a table or an Excel. You could convert that within those programs as a PDF file. Now, if you had an upload method within your district, if you could upload a file to the, to your server and get it as a hyperlink, you could always hyperlink it within the document. So you could say, please refer to table A. You could select that text, select the hyperlink button, and put that in there. Try to see if I have, so let's say we had, so this is, right? So this is a document that's a PDF. It's hosted online. Well, imagine this is a table or just a completely different document. You can select that address, and you can insert it that way. Insert, and it's going to be in there. The other options, we've experimented with using the HTML code and breaking Excel and tables down into raw code. The problem is when you run the compare, it can have some issues. So that's why it's in development for a little bit longer right now. We want to make sure that it's easy to put tables in, and that, importantly, that the compare feature works. We're also working on being able to insert images. So let's say you wanted to insert an organizational chart. We want to be able to insert those types of images natively to the document. Again, if you didn't have that, if the image was hosted on your district website, you can always reference it by creating a hyperlink and inserting it that way. Okay, so we got a question about, will you receive an email asking you or letting you know that you should come back and make changes? The short answer to that is no. Everything is driven through the dashboard and through policies. Now, we're working on having an alerts either button or icon in here that will let you know, like, hey, ASBA responded back to you, or you got a new note. And so that's in development right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But for right now, no. But in the future, yes. But there'll be a notification within PolicyBridge, but it's not going to email you. PolicyBridge will only email you once, and that is if you right-click on the document and do the download PDF. If this was no, and you wanted to create a new document, it's going to email you and let you know that it's ready to go. So like, okay, I hit no. The PDF has been queued to print. This is exactly what you'll see. You'll be notified when it's ready. You'll get an email and it'll say, hey, your document's ready to go. Then you would log in, right-click collection metadata again, click it. It's going to ask you if you want to re-render one, which you would hit yes. And then if you click yes, it's going to load a PDF over here. Let's see. Let's reload. Okay. Got another question on compare. So the compare feature is always going to be associated with any document that you want to look at. So we're looking at document AC. I can right-click on it. I'm going to hit Edit Document. And you'll see that it says compare versions, but in this situation, I only have one. There's a public version. So I'm going to have to go in here and add some new text. I'm going to shorten the sentence up here. I'll hit Save. Update training. And now I've got two different versions of my document. Again, I've got the public one that only, no one can see those changes that I made to because it's in draft. I'm going to select those two compare options again, and then I'm going to trigger this button that says Compare Versions, and then that's how I get to compare in the red line. Okay. Okay. So let's say we have a question again about printing. So let's say I only wanted to print this. AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity. You'll see there's a little box associated with the document. I'm just going to check that. Up at the top of the web page, it says print. I'm going to click print. Now in this case, it's blocked, so I'm going to click the pop-up blocker. There's the link to the address. You can click this, or you can always allow. It's going to open the little dialog window, and then there's my document. So I can either save it as a PDF, which is what it's defaulted to in this case, or if you're on a network or at home, you can select change, and then that printer is going to show up. Right now it's a little bit slow, but I would be able to select one of the printers here in our office, and then I could print it that way. And again, if you wanted to print all of section A, I'm going to select all of A, repeat those same steps. I'm going to click print, go up here, I'm going to allow the pop-up block. And again, I want to make sure header and footer is turned off. If I turn it on, it's going to show the web address. Not really something you want to include. There's the web address. So since you do not want this, deselect header, footer. It's going to remove that. And then you can, again, save it as a PDF, or you can select from one of the available printers. All right. Do we have any more questions? Keep sending the questions. And I know we're almost out on time, so this would be a good time to flood us with a bunch of questions. Yes, we have removed the policy numbers. We have gone to just the lettering system. All right. David, do you have any words of wisdom that you've noticed or any recommendations while we wait for some questions to come in?
Just don't be afraid to contact us if you're having any problems. It's helpful for us too. I think we're kind of getting into a rhythm now, but when we first launched it, we'd be contacted with questions. Sometimes there were problems that existed that we were excuse me, unaware of. So don't hesitate to call or email, and we'll get things worked out.
Okay, so we have a question again on bullets, and we know we've heard from you guys. The bullets have been for some a nightmare and for some easier. So let me. Oh, here's one. Here we go. So if you wanted to retain the formatting, oh, that was interesting. You see that? I got a shorter one. If you wanted to retain the format of the bullet, you can copy and paste one. And then you can insert a new bullet here, and then you could type in that new text. So here is a new item. Let me hit return. Oops, I'm going to do the copy again. And so that's how, if you wanted to do a new one or a pre-existing bullet item. Here's a new item. Again. If you wanted to repeat this again, you could select bullet. Go down here. Here is a list. I'm going to select list 1, and then it's going to align it with the previous one. And so I can go again, hit paste. Here's a new item. So that's a quick way to do it. If you're doing like block or copy and pasting, like you've got a massive Word document, and you're going to copy and paste it, the odds are that the bullets are going to get a little funky. So for right now, it's a little time consuming if you're doing a bulk edit, but that's probably the best way to retain that system. If you wanted to do custom lists, one, select that bit of text, I'm going to show you this is a list item 1, and now it's got an indent, but it doesn't have the bullet item. I could do my own numbering here. I could change it to Roman numerals if I wanted to. So those are some options. Got a couple more questions coming in. Guys, if you have any more questions, keep sending them in. It'll take just a second here. Okay, so while we wait for a couple more questions, I'm going to bring up a new document here with some contact information in it. You're okay, right? Right. So here's some contact information for us. Oh. All right. Well, the way this is working, it's not letting me put up our information. So you can always go to our website, ASBA. About ASBA, we've got a little staff section. And from here, you can email me. Just click that little button, and it's going to launch your email application. And then this is our policy services team. If you have a legal question, you can, actually any of you guys, right? You can email Chris Thomas, he's the director, or Dr. Rolls, or Steve, or David, who's joined us today. If you have technical questions, or if you need help editing, or formatting, or, you know, Renee's always great, and she always responds quickly. You can email her. Or you can always give us a call and ask for one of us. We're going to jump back and see if we've got any more questions before we end. Yes, this webinar is actually being recorded, and it will be on YouTube hopefully by the end of today. And everyone who attended and everyone who didn't attend will get a link to this webinar. So just another quick reminder, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have multiple phases of PolicyBridge. So as we push new features and new functions, where it says download the training manual, it'll have a comma or a parenthesis, and it'll have a new date. So if you see a new date, you're going to want to click on the training manual and get that new or updated information. In the off chance, if you're not online, there's the old Life Published site, but I'm fairly confident we've got everyone on the new PolicyBridge website. And again, if you have any trouble logging in, you can email me. If you do not know your district-specific web address, you can email me as well, and I can get that information over to you. Let's see if you got any last-minute questions here. All right. Well, I think that